Hi everyone, this is Erin Stelter and this is my week 3 video discussion. I am covering chapter 5, which is mapping troll-like practices on Twitter, and recipe 2, how may we characterize the sources of troll-like activity. So to begin with, in recipe 1, the PDF discusses how to create a list of potential troll accounts. And of course, they're using the Dutch election as their example. And so they take the accounts that had the most negative comments and created a list from there. And so for recipe 2, we're starting with that list that you compiled. And they give 2 methods to characterize the sources of this troll-like activity. So the first method is to take your list and you're going to collect profile information. And the profile information they want you to collect is the profile description, the profile picture, and the banner picture. And so for the description, things you're going to look for are repeated in your list, repeated phrases and hashtags that kind of represent that, like if they're trolling the left, liberals, then they would have the same either anti-liberal messaging or pro-conservative messaging, and vice versa, the same if it's a liberal trolling conservatives. So you look at their profile to see, and they will have similar phrasing because if it's one troll creating these accounts, they'll be copying and pasting most likely. And then you're going to look at their profile picture, and you can do a Google image search like you may have seen on MTV's Catfish, where you can drag an image into this Google image search. If you'll just type into Google image search, it'll come up. It's free. You just drag and drop a picture in there, and if it can, it'll tell you the source. It'll tell you if the image appears all over the internet, in which case it's probably a stock photo or a photo of a model, that sort of thing. And if it's one of those, it's probably not that model's actual account. So that's a good sign that it might be a troll or it might be a catfish. Also, if there is no profile picture, they could just be lazy setting up their account, or that is another indicator that it might be a troll. And the same with the banner photo. Do your drag and drop and see if it's a stock photo or an actual photo. If it's if it's a photo that you have off your phone that you've used as your banner photo, when you drag and drop it, it'll say something like it's a single image, or they weren't able to find it anywhere else. They'll tell you some of the data, like the dimensions and what they think is in the picture, that sort of thing. But it won't come up with a lot of hits. So, and then along with that, they suggest getting metadata from the profile with Twitter API. And API stands for Application Programming Interfaces. This is kind of technical, and a lot of people, myself included, wouldn't have access to this sort of thing. Programmers can request this API data from Twitter for when they're programming, building websites and that sort of thing, so that what they're programming will work well with Twitter, so the languages are the same kind of thing. So if you have access to that, you can request it, or I guess if you already have access to it because you've already requested it, then you can look up metadata. In this case, they're suggesting you look up each profile on your list, the date that the account was created. And what you're looking for is a pattern if several of them were created around the same date. if you don't have access to Twitter API, you can go in and do the legwork yourself. The profile will tell you when the month and the year that the profile was created. So you can just go in and look that up yourself if it's a small enough project. Like I mentioned last week when we found those Twitter bot accounts about the wind energy deal, they were all created around the same time, August the year before. And we could just see that on several of them, and they all had stock photos as their profile pictures. And then they all had similar photos of solar panels, different sorts of solar panels as their banner picture. So in that case, like this is describing, you could tell that that group of profiles are what the PDF discusses and calls sock puppet accounts. And what that means is one person has created all of these accounts like sock puppets to spread their one particular message as though it's several different people. So that's one way to characterize that source of troll-like activity. The other way is a little more technical, and I had a little harder time following, but use that Twitter API again to, from your list, and together gather all of the friends IDs that are following those accounts. And again, if you don't have API, you can do the legwork, but in this case, that would be a much harder job to make a list of all of the people following each of these accounts. But you take that information, you put it into a spreadsheet, and then they suggest taking that spreadsheet, and there are different platforms you can use. They suggest Table2Net or Gephi, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, it's Gephi. And with those platforms, you can put data from a spreadsheet in, and it will create a visual representation of a network, or if there's a network present. So, maybe a little too dark in here to see, but here we've got the circle graph that and there's like little faint lines that are connecting each one, and that's the example from our PDF from the list they compiled from the Dutch election. And the circles that are at the center of the cluster are, they have more friends in common or followers in common, and the ones on the outskirts have less in common. And so the ones on the inside, so if you have several in common, and I'll use the example of the wind energy accounts that we found, they all had very similar, they were all following each other. And so in a sample like this, that would have shown up as them being at the center of the network with a few other accounts, you know, some random people that followed them or that they followed being on the outskirts of that. And so, and then both of these methods, you actually look at the data and, you know, you have to use your brain a little bit and determine if this is troll-like activity that you're seeing, or if this could just be an individual that doesn't like that candidate, which is always a possibility. But if, you know, you have all these things working together, then, and especially if you do the two methods and then compare that information as well, then you'll have even a better idea if you're dealing with a troll or several trolls, or just a bunch of angry individuals, so, or a catfish. So thank you for listening to me ramble, and I look forward to hearing all of your discussions, and I hope everyone has a great weekend. Thanks. Bye.